The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. A sense of unease lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. My hands trembled as I held the document in front of me, my eyes tracing the words that confirmed my worst fear. He had done it. He had sold my house. A house that had been in my family for 3 generations. Gone. Signed away without my knowledge, without my consent. Stolen. I could not breathe. My chest tightened as I flipped through the pages, searching for some kind of mistake, some oversight that could undo this nightmare. But every signature, every legal stamp, every fine-printed clause was in order. The betrayal was real. I staggered backward, my mind reeling. How? Why? He had told me we were in this together. Every decision, every investment, every promise. Lies. All of it. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, the screen lighting up with his name. I stared at it, my pulse pounding in my ears. Did he expect me to be grateful? To understand? The memories flooded in, the whispered reassurances, the casual, "Trust me, I will take care of everything." The way he had laughed, kissed my forehead, lied to my face. I picked up the phone, my fingers tightening around it. My voice was steady, but my rage simmered beneath the surface. "Where are you?" A pause. The hesitation in his breath told me everything. He knew. He knew I had found out. "I was going to tell you," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "It was the best thing for us. I had no choice." No choice? My jaw clenched. He had taken everything from me, and he dared to act as if it was unavoidable? "You stole my home," I whispered, the weight of those words pressing down on my chest. He exhaled sharply, his tone shifting, defensive, irritated. "You are overreacting. It was a business decision. We needed the money, and you—" I hung up before he could finish. My hands curled into fists as I stared at the walls around me, the walls that had once felt safe, warm, mine. Now they felt foreign, temporary. The realization struck like a hammer to my chest. I had nothing left, but as I stood there, grief and fury colliding within me, something shifted. The devastation remained, but beneath it, something stronger began to rise. I would not be a victim. He thought he had won, that I would break, walk away, accept my fate. He was wrong, because this was not the end. This was the beginning. I remember the first time I met him, Zayden. He had a way of making you believe in him, a charm that felt effortless, a voice that carried reassurance like a warm blanket on a cold night. I had never been the kind to trust easily, but with him it felt different, safe. He made promises, not grand, sweeping declarations, but quiet, steady vows. "I will take care of you. You will never have to worry about anything." And I believed him. We built a life together, brick by brick. The house was more than walls and windows. It was a foundation, a legacy. It had been passed down through my family, standing firm through every storm. The place where I had learned to walk, where my mother had taught me how to bake, where my father had carved our initials into the old oak tree in the backyard. It was more than property. It was history. Zayden knew that. He knew how much it meant to me. At first, he treated it with the same reverence I did. He talked about renovations, about making it ours. He ran his hands along the kitchen counters, smiling at the possibilities. "This is where our future begins," he had said, pulling me into his arms. I had no reason to doubt him, but looking back, I see the cracks, the small, almost invisible fractures that had been there all along, the late-night phone calls, the whispered conversations just out of earshot, the way he would brush off my questions with an easy laugh. "Nothing to worry about, love, just business." There was always something pressing, something urgent. He had a way of making me feel guilty for asking too much. "Do you not trust me?" I did, foolishly, completely. Then came the requests. Small at first. A document he needed me to sign, just a formality. A power of attorney just in case something happened while he was away on business. "Standard procedure," he had assured me. I never thought to question it. Until the changes began. One day, I noticed the first sign, an envelope on the dining table, left open just enough to reveal its contents. A notice from the bank. A mortgage I had never taken out. I confronted him that night. He was calm, his voice measured. It is just to help with cash flow, nothing to be concerned about, trust me. I let it go. Then came the visitors, men in sharp suits with unreadable expressions. They spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting toward me whenever I walked into the room. When I asked who they were, Zayden would wave it off. Associates, business partners. The unease settled deep in my bones, but I ignored it. I wanted to believe that the man I loved was exactly who he claimed to be. Then, one evening, I overheard him. I had come home early, stepping through the front door just in time to hear his voice in the other room. Low, tense. She has no idea. It will be finalized by the end of the month. I stood frozen in place. I was she. I forced myself to move, my footsteps careful, deliberate. As I stepped closer, I caught more of the conversation. Once it is done, I will be free of this mess. Just make sure the paperwork is airtight. The world tilted beneath me, my stomach twisted, nausea rising in my throat. I gripped the edge of the doorway for support. He was selling something tied to me. The air grew thick, suffocating. I turned and walked back out the door before he could notice me. My mind raced as I tried to piece together the truth. That night, I barely slept. My thoughts spun in endless circles, replaying every moment, every red flag I had ignored. By morning, I had made a decision. I needed answers. I spent the day searching emails, bank statements, documents I had signed without a second glance. The more I found, the colder my blood ran. He had taken loans against the house, my house. He had transferred ownership under his name, using the documents I had signed blindly. And now he was selling it, without my knowledge, without my consent. The man I had trusted had been planning this for months, maybe even years. This was never about love. It was about control, about greed. I stared at the papers spread across the table, my hands shaking, and then something inside me snapped. This was not just deception. It was theft. A betrayal so deep it burned. I had been blind, but now I saw him for what he was, and he was going to pay. The moment I realized the full extent of what he had done, something inside me fractured. I sat in the middle of the living room, my living room, surrounded by papers that spelled out my ruin in cold, indifferent ink. Deeds, contracts, bank withdrawals, each one a knife driven deeper into my back. He had not just sold the house. He had drained every account tied to my name, every cent. My name was still on some of the loans, meaning the debt was mine to bear, not his. Mine. I felt a hollowness in my chest, a deep, gaping wound where trust had once lived. Then came the moment of absolute devastation. I found the final document, a sale agreement, dated 2 weeks ago. The house was no longer mine. It had already been signed away. He had done it. I had been living in a house that was no longer mine. I covered my mouth with both hands, willing myself not to scream. My breath hitched, the walls closing in. How could I have been so blind? The sound of the front door unlocking sent ice through my veins. Footsteps, his footsteps. He walked in as if nothing had happened, tossing his keys onto the counter. When he saw me sitting there, surrounded by the wreckage of his betrayal, he paused. A flicker of something crossed his face. Not guilt, not shame, annoyance. He sighed. I was going to tell you. I stared at him, my body numb, my hands curling into fists. Tell me what, Zayden? My voice was eerily calm, too calm. That you sold my house out from under me? That you drained my accounts? His expression hardened. We needed the money. You do not understand how business works. I slammed my hands on the table, the papers scattering like fallen leaves. Business? You stole from me. You lied. You looked me in the eye, held me in your arms, and told me you would take care of me. My voice cracked. And the entire time you were planning this? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. It is not that simple. It is exactly that simple, I whispered. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his jaw tightening when he saw the name on the screen. That was the moment I knew. He was walking away from this untouched. The house was gone. The money was gone. And he was moving on. A cold realization settled over me like a shroud. He thought he had won. He thought I would crumble, break, disappear. That I would scream, cry, beg him to fix this. But I did none of those things. I stood up, walked past him, and left. I could feel his eyes on my back, but I did not turn around, because I was not broken. I was burning, and I was about to turn that fire into something he would never recover from. I spent the next 48 hours in silence, not a word, not a tear, just the slow, methodical process of piecing together what had happened and what I was going to do next. Zayden thought he had left me with nothing. He was wrong. I still had my name, my mind, my will. And now I had something far more powerful than money or property. I had purpose. Vengeance was not a wild, reckless fury. It was patient, precise, calculated. I started with the paperwork. I pored over every document, searching for cracks in his scheme. If he had made even a single mistake, I would find it. And then, buried beneath layers of legal jargon, I saw it. A signature, mine. But something was off. I traced the ink with my fingertip. The curve of the letters, the spacing, it was not my writing. He had forged my name. That was it. That was his mistake. The law would not save me from the debt he had piled onto my name. But fraud? That was a different story. I needed proof. I spent days gathering everything I could. Emails, texts, financial statements, recorded calls. Every lie, every manipulation, every theft. I built a case so airtight he would not be able to take a single breath without choking on it. But evidence was not enough. I needed a stage, a moment, a way to tear his world apart in front of everyone who ever mattered to him. So I waited, and then the perfect opportunity presented itself. The setup for the fall. Zayden had always craved status. He thrived on admiration, on the illusion of wealth and power. And now, with the sale of my house and the money he had siphoned, he had positioned himself exactly where he wanted to be, at the center of a high-profile real estate deal. A deal that would cement his reputation, a public deal. An event was scheduled at a luxury venue, a gathering of investors, executives, and journalists, the perfect audience. And I had just the story to give them. I dressed carefully that evening, not for him, but for the battle ahead. Warriors did not wear armor for protection. They wore it to make a statement. When I arrived, the room was glittering with wealth. Men in sharp suits, women in sleek gowns, the clinking of champagne glasses, the murmur of polite conversations. And at the center of it, all stood Zayden, laughing, shaking hands, basking in his own self-importance. He had no idea what was coming. I walked straight to the stage, past the guards, past the event coordinators. Confidence was a weapon, and I wielded it like a blade. Then I spoke. Good evening. I would like to tell you all a story about deception, fraud, and the man you are all about to invest in. Silence fell over the room. Every head turned, including his. I watched the color drain from his face as I held up the forged contract. This is my house, I said, my voice unwavering. Or at least it was, until Zayden Hayes stole it from me, forged my name, sold my property, drained my accounts, and now he is standing here, about to take your money the same way he took mine. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Investors exchanged glances. Someone from the press raised a camera. Zayden stepped forward, panic flashing in his eyes. That is a lie. I pulled out my phone and hit play. His voice echoed through the speakers. She has no idea. It will be finalized by the end of the month. A gasp, then another. He lunged for me. Turn that off. Security intercepted him before he could reach me. I looked him in the eye, and for the first time, I saw something I had never seen before. Fear, because he knew it was over. I stepped off the stage, walking past him as the first journalist reached for a microphone. As the first investor shook his head in disgust, as the first lawyer in the crowd began making calls, Zayden had spent years building an empire of lies, and in less than 5 minutes, I had burned it to the ground. Zayden's world began to collapse the moment I stepped off that stage. The whispers turned to murmurs, the murmurs into outrage. The investors, his lifeline, his validation, saw him for what he truly was, a fraud, a liar, a thief. Security had separated us, but I could still see him through the shifting crowd. His mask of composure had cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. He was scrambling now, trying to salvage what little control he had left. He reached for the nearest investor. "This is a misunderstanding." The man took a step back. Another voice cut through the noise. "You forged signatures." A journalist pushed forward, microphone extended. "Did you steal from your own partner, Zayden?" More cameras, more questions. He was trapped. I stood at the edge of the chaos, watching as he floundered. Watching as everything he had built on deception crumbled around him. Then, the final blow. A team of uniformed officers entered the room, their presence unmistakable. A hush fell. One of them approached Zayden, voice firm. "Zayden Hayes, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and financial misconduct." The color drained from his face. "Wait, this is a mistake." He turned to the crowd, grasping at the last remnants of his illusion. "Someone set me up, you know me." No one stepped forward to defend him, not the investors, not the journalists, not the colleagues he had once charmed. He was alone. The officer pulled his hands behind his back, securing the cuffs with a final, decisive click. As they led him past me, his eyes met mine. Gone was the arrogance, the control. All that remained was fear. He opened his mouth, to plead, to curse me. I did not know. I never gave him the chance. I turned away. Outside, the air was crisp, fresh. The city hummed around me, indifferent to the downfall of a man who had thought himself untouchable. I exhaled, the weight I had carried for so long finally lifting. It was over. He had taken everything from me, but in the end, I had taken everything from him. The courtroom was silent. All eyes were on him. Zayden sat at the defendant's table, his once perfect suit now wrinkled, his face pale. He looked smaller now, stripped of the confidence he had once worn like armor. The trial had been swift, the evidence against him overwhelming. The forged documents, the recordings, the fraudulent transactions, everything. He had tried to fight it. Lies, excuses, manipulation, none of it worked. The judge's voice rang clear. The court finds the defendant, Zayden Hayes, guilty on all charges. A murmur swept through the room. The weight of the verdict settled over him like a coffin lid. He turned, searching the crowd, maybe for sympathy, maybe for someone to save him. But there was no one left. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something, but he barely reacted. This was the moment he realized it was over. The gavel struck. Sentencing will be held in 30 days. The bailiff approached to escort him out, and for the first time he looked at me, not with anger, not with defiance, with fear. I met his gaze and held it. No words were needed. He knew. I walked out of that courtroom free. For the first time in months, I breathed easily, rebuilding from ashes. The house was gone. The money, the past, the years wasted, it was all gone. But I was still here, and I was not broken. I took back my name, my life. The fraud case meant his assets were frozen, including the money he stole from me. Legal battles would take time, but justice was mine. Slowly, I began to rebuild. Not just my finances, myself, and then the final twist. A letter arrived at my door weeks later, no return address, no signature. Inside was a single document, a deed. The house had been bought back in my name. I stared at it, disbelief crashing over me. Who? Then a second note, typed, impersonal but unmistakable. He stole from you. I stole from him. Consider it a debt repaid. No name, no trace. Someone had beaten him at his own game. I smiled, folding the paper carefully. The world had a way of balancing itself. The end of a chapter. Zayden Hayes would serve 15 years behind bars. No fortune, no reputation, nothing left. I walked through the empty halls of my reclaimed home, running my fingers along the walls that had once held my memories. And now they would again, because this was not the end. This was the beginning. Like this story? Subscribe for more. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, betrayal, and ultimate justice, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do you believe karma always wins? Let us know your thoughts below.